Hello, FPL managers, and welcome to Fantasy Football Hub's Game Week 6 predicted lineups video with me, James, and I'm joined by injury, font of wisdom, Mr. Ben Dinnery. Ben, do I even need to ask you about your Game Week 5? I assume you just smashed it out the park as always.
You broke up there, James. I lost you. So if we could just move on. I'm not really sure what you said, but yeah, fantastic week. Fantastic week. Thanks for asking.
That'll be. All right, mate. How's your Friday going? We are recording on a Friday, guys, as always. Ben, I assume it's as busy as pre-deadline Fridays tend to be for you.
Difficult because yeah, we've had with Carabao Cup always messes things up. So we've had 15 press conferences on Friday. The good news is if we go back to game week 4 where we had potentially up to 120 plus players at risk of missing out, that's dramatically dropped. So we're in and around the high 80s, early 90s this week. So hopefully we should get through it all without any problems.
That's good news. I'm happy for you. Well, without further ado, we will get into it. And as I always say to viewers of this video, this document that we're using here is a live document. So do keep an eye on it. You will find it on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. Members get access to all of it. Non-members will get access to about half of it. We'll go through it all today, though. But like I say, probably will change by the time we get to the deadline. All right, Ben. Good old Arsenal. Any news to report from the Arsenal camp?
Do not adjust your set, James, because for only about the second time that I can ever recall, the Arsenal treatment room is clear, is
Right.
empty.
Is
It's
this thing
gathering
on? Is
dust.
this thing working?
Uh, it's like we have Granit Xhaka who's returning after a 3-match suspension and also he's positive COVID test. Kieran Tierney was withdrawn fatigue-related cramp last weekend. That's why he was rested in the Carabao Cup. And also there were some question marks with regards to Thomas Partey, but Mikel Arteta revealed that his withdrawal midweek on that hour mark was precautionary. He's managing his load following his return from injury. So other than that, as it currently stands, we still have another session to go, by the way, because the North London derby isn't until Sunday. But as it currently stands, Arsenal have a fully fit squad.
All right. Bad news for Spurs fans. Good news for Ben Dinnery. Let's move on to Aston Villa then, if there's nothing else to say about Arsenal. And again, this is looking fairly unchanged. I don't see Buendia in there, Ben. Is there any particular reason for that? Is he still out from the international break?
No. Buendia is fit and available. I'm presuming you mean from the starting 11. And this was a tough
Yeah.
call. Last 2 games, Aston Villa have done really well. The result against Chelsea didn't necessarily reflect their performance. Ramsey's come in and done a great job. Buendia and Emi Martinez returned on the morning of last weekend's game, and that's why Buendia wasn't in the starting 11. But also, he started midweek in the Carabao Cup, and he hasn't been pulling up trees. So, following the result against Everton, which was a great performance, 3-0 win, it's a tough call, but I just thought that Dean Smith would probably stick with more or less that same starting 11 in it. So the Buendia is mainly based around his individual form, which hasn't been fantastic, and also the form of those players who've come in.
Yeah, I mean, don't fix it if it's not broken, I think is the phrase. I don't see Buendia in many FPL teams these days. So I think he was more of a game week 1 pick that quickly fell flat on its face. Brentford, they had a very good game against Wolves in game week 5. Tony and Mbeumo both on the score sheet, both starting again in game week 6 as far as Ben's concerned. Anything else to mention whilst we're on Brentford, Ben?
I mean, the only thing to say is Thomas Frank has actually stated that 10 of the players that started at Molineux in that victory over Wolves will be starting again this weekend. Who the odd one out is, we're not sure. Shandon Baptiste was sent off against Wolves, 2 yellow cards, but he served his ban midweek. And also Rico Henry picked up a slight ankle problem. That's why he missed out midweek, but he is fit and available. So maybe that Baptiste, but also we've seen Fours, the striker in the Carabao Cup, score 4 times. Is that been enough to maybe force his way into the starting 11? But I'm not so sure.
It's very cryptic, isn't it, from Frank? He's rapidly adapting to the Premier League ways. Okay, Brighton and Hove. And again, we see no Lamptey here. I have heard whispers, Ben, that Lamptey is on the road to recovery sooner rather than later. Also, is there some doubt over Basuma this week too?
Yeah, I mean, Tariq Lamptey first, he returned to the matchday squad last weekend, slightly ahead of schedule, and managed 45 minutes in the Carabao Cup. So again, it's going to be a gradual integration into that first team. He's been out 10 months, ongoing hamstring problems. So this will be about managing Tariq Lamptey. You don't want to push him back too soon. So I would expect him to be in and around the squad, but certainly not starting. With these Basuma, he's strained his knee overstretched last weekend, early doors, first half, managed to play into and around that 70th minute mark, and had a little bit of a reaction post-match. Now, it is hoped that he will train on Saturday along with Alexi McAllister, and both those players should be in the squad. Of course, Brighton don't play until Monday night, so those additional recovery days will help those players.
Yeah, 2 assists for McAllister midweek. Both of them to Connolly, actually. Both players looked very good, so maybe they'll be in and around that starting 11 before long. Burnley, again, I'm sorry, Burnley fans, I don't want to spend too much time on them here. They've got Leicester away, which is a pretty challenging fixture. Ben, as hardy as ever, the Burnley bunch?
Yeah, Josh Brownhill missed out midweek with a dead leg. He returned to the training pitches on Thursday. Wayne Hennessy, backup stopper to Nick Pope, of course. He injured his ankle practicing penalties on the eve of the Carabao Cup match. He's got a chance. Of the rest, Kevin Long, very close. Summer signing Connor Roberts suffered a little bit of a setback after undergoing groin surgery. That's thigh related, so it could be a while before we see him in and around that first team.
Rightio. Now to Chelsea. Far more intrigue as far as FPL goes. Tough fixture in game week 6 against Man City. And this looks quite familiar, this lineup. The key talking point, I think, here is probably, and rarely, I suppose, for injury news, between the sticks, Ben.
Yeah, Edward Mendy, he's past fit and he starts. So Thomas Tuchel has actually said that Kepa will make way. You have missed one of the other big injury updates from the Chelsea, and that's the absence of Mason Mount.
Of course.
And he picked up a knock after coming on as a substitute against Aston Villa. Significant in the fact that this will be the first time Mason Mount has ever missed a game for Chelsea because of injury. So mark that down in your little notebook. It's not serious. Tuchel said if the game had been on Sunday, then Mount could have been involved. So he'll miss out on Saturday, but back in the Champions League.
Arsenal with a clean bill of health, and now this Mount news. This is unprecedented. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and great shout on Mount. Of course, he is still relatively popular, not necessarily amongst the Twitter community on FPL, but certainly the wider FPL managerial population. They do seem to like Mount, so that will be a knock for them. Crystal Palace gaining in popularity, actually. A Monday night fixture against Brighton. Conor Gallagher in there, he seems to be the most popular. And you've got Edouard starting up there instead of Benteke. Ben, that must break your heart.
Yeah, look, it's a 50-50 call. We maybe expected Edouard to come in after his 2-goal haul, after coming off the bench against Tottenham. Made another impact at Anfield. You know what? Palace weren't as bad as that 3-0 scoreline suggested. 3 goals from set pieces. So we're not expecting many changes from Patrick Vieira. I just think Edouard deserves his chance. He hasn't ruled out, by the way, the possibility of starting both of those players together. But I don't think this weekend would be that occasion. I think we'll stick with this, what is seen as a 4-3-3.
So it could be double Palace attack then in the Dinnery's differential, should they start together, Ben? One to keep an eye on for you.
Quite possibly, James. Quite possibly.
Okay, let's move on to Everton now. And Rondon starts up top. We know that Calvert-Lewin will miss this game, I think, Ben. Also, Richarlison out as well, which is a big knock for them.
Yeah, I mean, the news broke late last week with Seamus Coleman, Jordan Pickford and Richarlison all missing that Villa game. That was a blow, and that was probably massively contributed to their heavy defeat. And you're right, Rondon will lead the line. Not ideal. He's missed 4 months of competitive football. And he's been thrown in at the deep end a lot earlier than Rafa would have hoped for. So, look, he's still a quality player, but he lacks that sharpness, that little bit of a turn of pace. But, they're limited in what options the Toffees have. So we expect Rondon to lead the line and probably Demai Gray to sit in behind, come in from the wing with Alex Iwobi out on the left. Good news with Luca Digne. He came off midweek with a calf issue. He's been past fit. Jordan Pickford back on the training pitches, so Begovic makes way. But elsewhere, there isn't a great deal of change. Seamus Coleman, Andre Gomez, Jean-Philippe Gaumin, they're all still out.
Okay, I appreciate you describing Norwich as the deep end there. I think that's probably a little bit generous. I think if you are going to return to football after 4 months out, Norwich is probably the fixture to do it. So interesting to see how he gets on. Of course, lots of eyes on Demai Gray as well, who Ben has starting just behind him. Let's see what they can do. Okay, Leeds United, potentially the most discussed team going into game week 6, Ben, as far as injury goes. Bamford was ruled out yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. There is still ambiguity about the other highly owned attacking asset, though, and that is RAPHINHA. He's in your predicted 11 here. What's your reasoning for that?
This is difficult. So prior to the press conference, I would have expected Patrick Bamford to be past fit, looking at mechanism of injury, looking at the updates and thinking, it looked to be a minor strain. He was walking around without a cam boot, without any protective cast, just a little bit of light strapping. That suggested isn't serious, but we don't know if it's been aggravated or exacerbated in training through the week. He's out. I would be surprised if there wasn't a return maybe in game week 7. Question marks over RAPHINHA, and the other big talking point would be Jack Harrison. For RAPHINHA, we know he went into the game with Newcastle with a niggling sort of knee and thigh problem. There's a lot of chatter on the rumour mill and Twitter that he was going to actually miss out. That wasn't the case, but he came off late in that game, and that was reported as a hip problem. I see this more of an issue that's being managed by the player himself as opposed to something fresh and new. And therefore, that's why I'm prepared to take a gamble with RAPHINHA. Like I say, unless it's been aggravated through the week, then I think it's something that he can play on. With regards to Jack Harrison, he's been cleared after testing positive for COVID, but just because the protocol said he's available, Bielsa said it doesn't mean that he's going to be picked. The other big question mark, of course, is Luke Ayling. And this is a player who tends to play a lot of games. He only missed 20 minutes of Premier League football last season. So we know he's robust. We know he can tolerate the game. So when he comes off, that tends to be fairly serious. And given, again, looking at the mechanism of injury and how that occurred, it looks as if he might have slightly sprained possibly that MCL ligament in his knee. So there are question marks there. And I would, if pushed, I would say RAPHINHA, I'm more confident about being involved, and Ayling, not so much.
And Ben, for the benefit of RAPHINHA owners who might be wondering, do you think that, in your expert opinion, that the sort of niggle that RAPHINHA has is one where either he starts and plays or he's not going to be involved at all? Or do you think there's the dreaded chance for his owners that he comes off the bench?
So this isn't like a soft tissue or a muscular strain, where I would always say err on the side of caution. And if you're going to put a player in there, you start them. Players can warm up properly. They've got the full pitch. They can go through the full, routine. Whereas when you're on the bench and you've got like a 2 or 3 meter patch stretched down the side of a pitch, you aren't really going to get up to that level to where you can go on the pitch and maybe confidently break out into a full burst, a full sprint. And when you consider what type of player RAPHINHA is, which is quick feet, quick changes of direction, explosive pace, that's difficult. With this issue that he's got, I can see, I think he'll be in the match day squad. I really do. That's my own personal thoughts. If he isn't 100% and things aren't going well for Leeds, will Bielsa be prepared to throw him on? I think so.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I've got to remind viewers, because sometimes we do get comments, nothing that Ben says here is gospel, and nor would he ever claim that it's gospel. It's always his professional opinion. He is a pro, this is what he does for his full-time job, but it's always opinion at the end of the day. You can't legislate for surprises, and we learned that last week in particular. Trent Alexander-Arnold and the like throwing up some interesting curveballs for us. But anyway, let's talk about Leicester very quickly. Again, ownership amongst Leicester players not huge. The Barnes train has seemingly come to a stop. A couple of people jumping on Vardy is an intriguing differential. A great game week 6 fixture at home against Burnley. Anything that needs to be reported from a fitness perspective, Ben?
Only the return of Johnny Evans midweek, played 90 minutes, managing an ongoing painful foot condition. I can't see him starting. For me, it's going to be about Soyuncu and Vestergaard. Other than that, only the 2 long-term absentees, nothing else to worry about.
Thank you very much. Now then, talking of the Trent Alexander-Arnold curveball, he's back in your game week 6 team, Ben. Does that mean good news for his owners?
Absolutely, 100%. Trent just missed out in the Carabao Cup, probably held back, and no real need to take any risks. So he's been on the training pitches, training fully. I can't see anything but a start for Trent this weekend.
Oh, that is music to my ears, and I'm sure most people watching this as well. Let's very quickly talk about Jota. He did get 72 minutes midweek. What's the status on Firmino, first and foremost? Because that might dictate how likely it is that Jota starts this game.
Yeah, Firmino is training. He's missed now, I think, around about maybe 4, possibly even 5 weeks. So he has had a significant chunk on the sidelines. We know it's hamstring related, which is always a red flag. Jurgen Klopp's come out and he basically said, I'm undecided whether Firmino will be in the squad, even though he has had these few days of training. If he does miss out, he's 100% in the Champions League. So that, indicates to me that, he's still, there are still doubts there, and that's why I went for Jota to lead the Liverpool line, but his days will be numbered as a guaranteed starter.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see whether they end up sharing minutes similar to how they were earlier in the season, where one of the two would be subbed off for the other around that 60-minute mark. That would put a big dent into Jota's FPL prospects. He's been terribly unlucky in the last couple of game weeks, probably because I own him. Right, let's quickly move on to Manchester City, Ben, and it's always a gamble, isn't it? You've got Torres starting up front there. He did start midweek, but of course rested in game week 5. What's your reasoning for putting Torres back into that starting lineup?
Well, of course, obviously City blanked against Southampton first and foremost, and it is difficult. We looked at possible alternatives to lead that attack. Sterling played 90 minutes as well in the Carabao Cup. There are a lot of question marks in this team at the moment. So this is a lineup that I think will change ahead of deadline. I'm probably going to sit down and do a little bit research. We've seen Aymeric Laporte and John Stones back on the training pitches Thursday, although Pep wouldn't confirm whether either was fit enough to be involved. We've seen Nathan Ake involved alongside Ruben Diaz. However, he's been away this week on compassionate leave following the passing of his father. And we also have question marks over Gundogan, Rodri, and also Zinchenko. And they're hoping to be involved maybe in part of the session on Friday afternoon. And in which case, Pep will make a decision on their involvement as well. So, this one definitely is a work in progress for this start 11, and I fancy I will make a couple of changes.
Can I just say how beautifully you pronounced Rodri there, Ben? That was incredibly exotic. I just want to quickly touch upon Kevin De Bruyne. There's been plenty of chat about whether or not it's time for him to be reintroduced to the starting 11 in the Premier League. He doesn't make your predicted 11. Is that something you may well factor in during your research between now and the deadline? Or are you pretty certain he's not going to make the cut?
No, I mean, he is in and around most definitely. He got minutes from the bench last week. It could come down to maybe the availability of Gundogan, and I might swap them out. Look, if you're asking us now if I'm more erring towards and leaning towards De Bruyne actually starting, but I just want to go through a few things before pulling the trigger on that one.
Well, it's a huge fixture. Some saying that the result of this game may well give us the clearest indication yet of who's going to end up winning the league, which is an incredibly bold claim in game week 6. But there we go. That's the sort of game where you want your best players, and Kevin De Bruyne certainly is that for Pep. Across the city to Manchester United, and some ominous news coming from the Old Trafford camp. Ben, I hear Cavani is back on the mend.
Cavani back in training, returned and rejoined the group after the Carabao Cup game. So that's why he wasn't considered midweek against West Ham. But he's fit, ready, available, expecting to come back into the squad and sit on the bench. That leaves only Diallo and Marcus Rashford as the only two players currently sidelined. Of course, we've seen Telles return midweek. Phil Jones was named on the bench. So yeah, pretty much like Arsenal. The treatment room is looking pretty good for United at the moment.
All right, well, no need to dwell. Let's quickly advance to Newcastle United now. Your boys, Ben, and what are we saying? Any major updates that FPL managers need to know? And that's a loaded question. I've mentioned FPL managers specifically there.
Joe Willock, possibly.
Yeah.
Attracts maybe a little bit of interest. Training ground injury, a little bit of a freak, kicked the ground, hurt his toe, definitely out of this game week and already flagged as a major doubt for game week 7. So that is a worry, considering we don't really have any attacking outlets other than Alan Saint-Maxim. Jamal Lascelles also ruled out. That may impact on just how the team is set up in our formation, and Steve Bruce tweaking maybe a back 5 or a back 4. But regards to any other assets, a lot of people seem to like Martin Dubravka, just at his price point. He has been back on the training pitches, surgery on his foot in the summer, which got infected. So that's caused a massive delay, but he's still 2 to 3 weeks away from being considered for the first team.
Appreciate it, Ben. Rightio, then Norwich. And again, we'll be pretty quick here. What do we have to say? The first thing I've noticed is that Billy Gilmore excluded from your predicted 11. He's quite a popular budget enabler. Why is that, Ben?
Yeah, look, there's quite a lot of competition now in that Canary squad. And I just felt that Daniel Falk needs to freshen things up. We've seen Matthias Norman start his first game last weekend along with Kabak. He got an assist, done really well, picked up a little bit of a knock, but he's fine. So there is some competition in there, and maybe it's time for a little bit of experience, a little bit of leadership on that pitch. And I don't know if Billy Gilmore is just given the results that Norwich have had and Daniel Falk, the pressure that he's under. Maybe he wants some leaders on that pitch, and Gilmore just lacks that little bit of experience, although his quality is undoubted. So that was the reason behind that.
Rightio, Kabak, yeah, interesting signing from Norwich. You'll remember him, some of you, from his Liverpool days. He has played in the Premier League before. 4.5 million though, so don't go anywhere near him, please. Southampton. I saw a tweet today from, I can't remember who it was now, saying, Armstrong out. And of course, they were talking about Stewart, not Adam, which will be a relief for some. People looking to these kind of strikers after the Calvert-Lewin and Bamford injury. Any other news other than Stewart's injury, Ben, that FPL managers need to know?
Maybe people were attracted by Jack Stevens at his price point. He's going to be out for potentially up to 3 months. So Jan Bednarik coming in. Theo Walcott's also back in training, but I don't see him garnering a lot of interest if I'm honest.
FPL managers everywhere will be distraught about that Jack Stevens news. Thank you. Okay. Tottenham Hotspur. Not that I wish him any ill, of course. I hope he recovers faster than that 3-month window. Tottenham Hotspur and Kane and Son up top. Were you surprised to see Son start last week, Ben?
It's hard to read. No. Plays his cards very close to his chest. I was told in the build up to the game that, it was very much touch and go. It was 50-50, and it was dependent upon how he responded to treatment and how he trained on the Friday. And then ultimately a decision would be made on the Saturday. So both him and Dyer were very, very late decisions, that came down to the wire. So yeah, slightly surprised. But that could have been, we've seen Maura out, we've seen Bergwijn out, and the circumstances probably meant that Nuno had to take a little bit of a risk in involving those players.
Can't see many FPL managers going near Spurs at the moment. It will be interesting to see how this result goes, though. If they do win it, and they win it compellingly, it could be a turning point for them. They have not started well at all under Nuno. Things perhaps can only get better. Although, with Spurs, you never know. Could get much worse yet. All right, Watford, Ben. And again, more focus on Watford than perhaps we would have predicted a couple of game weeks ago. Largely around Ismail Assar, who had a great game against Norwich. He's popular. He's one of the most popular transfers in ahead of their Newcastle fixture in game week 6. Is there anything that you want to add as far as Watford predicted lineup go?
Maybe good news for Ben Foster owners. Daniel Bachmann hasn't been taking part in full training, still modified sessions due to his knee. So that would suggest that Ben Foster's look to be, potentially starting goal again. And we mentioned Kiko Firmino because we mention him every week. He started his first game of the season last weekend, rested midweek as a precaution, just to rest his legs. He will be back in the squad.
I feel like Firmino has somehow become the unofficial mascot for this video series. Perhaps if he ever scores, we'll have to have some sort of party. Thank you for that. And West Ham, 2 teams to go. It's good news for those still stacked in that West Ham attack. Of course, we've got Leeds in game week 6. Antonio back in the fold. Ben Rama fit as well. Fornals, Cresswell, Kufal, they're all there. Ben, anyone conspicuous in their absence?
Not really. Only Ryan Fredericks. Groin problem from midweek. He is the only confirmed absentee. Alarm bells started ringing on Wednesday night when Mikel Antonio, who was available following his watch match suspension, was omitted from the match day squad completely. Everybody was, straight away assumed that it was injury related, but he was rested with one eye on this game this weekend. So I'm expecting a big performance from Mikel Antonio.
Excellent. Is he going to get your armband, do you think?
Nope.
Oh,
I don't.
You're like Nuno
Antonio.
Playing your cards close to your chest.
I cannot afford Antonio. Okay. I've got 5 premiums.
Your team's too full with Palace assets for the likes of Antonio. Okay, finally, Wolverhampton Wanderers, the serial underperformers. What did you say? You got Kane?
Captain Kane last weekend.
I've said it before on this series and I'll say it again. We talked to Ben for his injury knowledge and predicted lineup acumen, not his FPL knowledge or FPL acumen. Quite the opposite, in fact. We actually discourage him from giving FPL tips, and yet somehow he manages to sneak them in anyway.
Look, it wasn't my finest hour. I do. I like to play the game a little bit differently. I like to keep myself interested. Wolves, anyway, we'll move on. Wolves, 2 big injuries through the week. Disappointing result against Brentford. Bounced back somewhat against Tottenham. Ait-Nouri was one that may have come into the manager's thinking, but he went off after a clash with Tanganga. That was a head injury, removed as a precaution, but it has since been confirmed as concussion. So he is definitely out of the game due to the protocol. And we also seen that Yersin Mosquera, the Colombian centre-back, picked up another hamstring problem. Injuries which has blighted his start of his Wolves career. Now, early reports suggest that it could be in the region of 2 months that he spends on the sidelines. But other than that, it's just the usual long-term absentees, Pedro Neto, Otto. One thing, we did see Daniel Podence score through the week. That might be a sign to Bruno Lage to give him a chance in that starting 11. I mean, it's a difficult call, this Wolves side at the moment. So, again, that's another lineup that I may be looking to tinker with a little bit closer to deadline.
Yeah, still getting to know the manager. They do have all the makings of a very good side this season, yet to really turn those underlying stats into actual goals. Very, very frustrating for anyone who owns their assets, but plenty of the season left to go. Right, Ben, appreciated as always. I know how valuable your time is, particularly on this Friday. So it's been great to speak to you. Thank you very much. Like I've said already, viewers, you can check out the document that we're working from here on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. It will be updated before the deadline. It's almost certain. Ben's already alluded to a couple of tweaks that he wants to make. News will break with the embargoes tonight as well, so it's worth keeping an eye on. And if you don't already, do go and follow at Ben Dinnery on Twitter. I'm almost certain that you do, but on the off chance that you've been living under a rock, he is, he's a, well, like I said at the start, he's a font of injury-based wisdom. I can't really put it much better than that. So go and check him out. A great place to get the latest injury news. Right. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, do consider giving it a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ben, good luck for game week 6.
Likewise, Jamesy, and good luck to everybody else, and thanks for watching.
Look at you, signing off. All right.
Real weekend thoughts.
How do you follow that?
Pop your comments in the box below.
All right. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. See you next week.